All right, so I'm just going to quickly introduce our panel members, and then we'll get right into it. So Tyler Bird is out of Chicago with West Monroe Partners. We also have, starting at the top, Ed out of New York City, Omnicon Health Group. We have Leslie Newton. I hope I said that right. I got my picture over your last name, Leslie. Get that right?
You did.
Oh, shoot, did I get her last name right? And then Yvonne, who should be popping in here in a second. She looks like she's like me, learning a little bit about Zoom. So I feel for you. So those are our panelists. Member. I'm Sean Ryder. I'm out of the LA area. I'm a recruiting ops guy. I've been in that for quite some time. So again, topic of the day, 5 of the most underrated skills great recruiters have. And Ed, I'm going to hit Tyler first. Sorry about that. Tyler, I'm going to start off with you. And what we'll do is we'll each go through our conversation about our topic. I have one that I can add into it. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on our attendees to see if they put anything in chat. But either way, we'll just go through the topics that we have. So Tyler, I'm going to send it to you. What do you got for the conversation?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah. So underrated skills great recruiters have. A big one for me is sales acumen. With that, there's a lot of aspects of sales I think falls within recruiting and the job. Hunting, sourcing candidates, finding, people profiles that match and align with the requirements that you're recruiting for, putting together a targeted pitch then, and really, focusing on areas where you think the opportunity would, the potential candidate would benefit from the opportunity, a good opportunity. It's constantly selling the opportunity through the entire recruiting process, the interview process, making sure that you're hitting on the areas that maybe that candidate's frustrated in the current position. Negotiation, when he does get time to make the offer. I don't know about you guys out there, but I think every single offer I make now, there's some negotiation. And I think candidates don't want to leave any money on the table. So even if, the initial offer is in line with what they're looking for and what they told you that they were looking for, I still feel that candidates, will try and get anything additional on there. So there's always negotiation, which again, you'd see in the sales cycle as well. Being able to close the deal, you get it all the way to the finish line. You need to close the deal, have them sign on the dotted line, or in DocuSign, click the button to accept the offer nowadays. So I think there's a lot of aspects, recruiters do that, relate well to on the sales side of things.
Hey, Tyler, real quick, are you doing full life cycle?
Yes, full life cycle.
So let me throw a curveball back at you. So I got my start in recruiting in third-party agency, right? Staffing agency out of Milwaukee, recruited in Chicago too by you. And then moved into corporate recruiting later. I've been in-house recruiting ops for quite a few years now, but prior to that, I did consulting work where I'd go into companies and help build out sourcing teams to do strategic outbound recruiting, right? It wasn't processing resumes or applicants. It was, to my opinion, it was, hey, you're a sourcer just like in third-party search.
Yep.
Whenever I'd go into a company, I'd ask, who's had third-party experience? Because what I found, because I taught a tool and a process, right? I found people that had third-party search experience got that concept of outbound calls, getting into that sales mentality of, hey, you gotta pound the phones, for lack of better words, when you're doing that type of search.
Yep.
How do you think that kind of comes back into sales acumen? And if somebody's been pure corporate recruiting, how can they kind of add to that skill set?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I completely agree. I think, coming from a third-party agency type of background, they typically hire salespeople. Like they're looking at you maybe to start as a recruiter, but eventually move over into the client side of things. So a lot of those third-party recruiting firms, they're really recruiting for salespeople down the road. Start out recruiting. But I also do think that recruiting itself it's a sales function, because you're selling people on the opportunity to work at your company. Now, people that have been, just pure corporate recruiters, they eventually, still learn to sell an opportunity, sell their company and their business just as well as anyone from a third-party side. But my recruiting team at West Monroe Partners, I'd say 85% of the recruiters are all former agency recruiters.
How about everybody else on the panel? What do you have like a ratio that you would know about your team?
For the most of the recruiters that I've hired that have had experience have had some sort of staffing agency experience, and then like half of my team we've grown ourselves. They started as coordinators or junior recruiters, and we've developed the talent. But I agree that I remember the days of there was it was a math problem. If you didn't make 75 cold calls a day, you were not going to get enough fresh candidates and make those number of placements that you needed to make to keep your seat. So it's true.
Yeah. Smile and dial.
Yeah.
I started my career in agency years ago, and that's I actually attest a lot of my success to my learning in the agency because you had to that sales. I mean, yeah. So I agree.
Yvonne?
I don't have any experience with agency recruiting. I've done mostly corporate recruiting since I've been in that space. But I do work, of course, with recruiters from different agencies when we are looking for hard to fill roles, and just the skill of moving really fast, almost in a way aggressively. I've noticed the sales, acumen that they have, because they're trying really to not only communicate in terms of, okay, I have to sell this candidate to this business, and I also have to sell myself so they can work with me for another project or for another role. So I've kind of seen the other side of it, and let me know I never want to be in that on that side, but I've never had I would say the opportunity to learn what that experience is like, I would say.
Gotcha. So Tyler, back to you. I didn't mean to cut you off or anything. You get on your sales acumen, or did you have anything else to add that you wanted to?
No, I mean, I'd say that, having a good, being kind of like a natural salesperson in recruiting, it's huge. I think some of the best recruiters out there are able to really sell their organization to candidates, and are able to probably close more positions than people with, that lack that kind of the sales acumen and that mindset.
Excellent. All right. So Ed, I'm going to pass it over to you on your topic.
Yeah, I think when we talk about recruiting, one of the things I talk about is like, how do we just win, right? I mean, so I just to set some context. I work for a holding company. Omnicom Health Group is an advertising agency, holding company, and then we'll just keep it simple, 20 agencies or advertising agencies within that network that my team supports. So we're a big shared services team, and so there's 20 presidents to pacify, and all of their hiring teams, and they all have different core values and whatnot. So we talk about how do we just win? Like, how do we keep them on our side? And it's just through really good account management, which you learn, I think, as a staffing agency recruiter. We also teach this behavior, but it's how do we over communicate? How do we create as little transparency as possible in the process with hiring managers, hiring teams, sharing and spotting and sharing trends with the leaders of the different companies? Because we find that when hiring managers are saying things like, whenever I work with recruiting, it's a black hole. It's a black hole. My job's been open for 3 years. I haven't seen any candidates. What we do most of the time through really just good account management is we eliminate the hyperbole of, no, your spot hasn't been open for 3 years. And every Wednesday you get an update from me with exactly what is going on with your search. And then to help my boss out, we use in our applicant tracking system, I just put in a little simple note every week. We override it, put a new note in. They're all saved, of like what's going on with the search. They upgraded the search, they downgraded the search, they've passed on the last 5 candidates, and they're not giving me good feedback. And it creates co-accountability with the business. And that's how we sort of just talk about how do we win their hearts, winning hearts, winning minds, and frankly, just winning, so that we're not getting beaten up, because frankly, recruiting is a little bit of a, what have you done for me lately? Thanks for the last hire, but now I just had 2 resignations, and because they're your fault, you made bad hires, please, we've all heard this. So it's about creating co-accountability, about I don't like a lack of transparency in the process. It's not 100% transparency, because then I would just never get my job done, but enough where everybody's on the same page, we're all moving together, know when to CC me or your manager so that it gets that hiring manager to reply with the feedback they never give you. So I think that's like one of the killer tools, just over communicating. And a lot of recruiters I know and respect get in trouble because if things aren't going well with the search, it's easier to just sort of like, especially now we're all home, we're not in an office where somebody can walk by and tap you on the shoulder. Like, I'm just going to hide behind my keyboard here. And like all of a sudden, oh, my camera doesn't work. I can't communicate with you. What? I have a bad connection. No, like even if it's bad news, you need to share the bad news. You know, I've reached out to 100 people and I'm just not impressed. We've got it posted. It's not working. Let's work together. Maybe the title doesn't make sense. Maybe the job description stinks. Maybe we're targeting the wrong candidates.
Hey, Ed, quick question for you. Around that account management and when you have that hard to find talent like that, do you ever give a list of candidates that you spoke with that declined you? Do you ever push that list up to your managers?
There are times where I'll encourage it, especially if somebody's saying like, well, I'm just not seeing the flow that I want to see. And I'll say, okay, let's take a step back. Your job's posted in these 4 places. We've received this many applicants and we've looked at every one of them and PS, like 4 of the 85 are appropriate. And I spoke with those 4 and here's why you saw just one of them. Absolutely. Like that kind of transparency is important. It takes a lot of work to do that. We usually end up doing that if things aren't going as well as we want them to. Or if we're sniffing out, like, I have a feeling that my hiring manager is frustrated that they're not seeing as many candidates as they want. And doing that can also encourage things like, well, you know what? I wanted to see all 4 of those, not just the one. Maybe the hiring manager will see one. Or here are the 84 people that applied. Here are their resumes bundled up. Maybe you're going to see something that I'm not, but they're here for you.
Yeah, but I've seen that work in the past where you do have that. It's a rec that's been open a while. You have that manager who's concerned, thinks recruiting isn't doing their job, but you show all those candidates that have been pre-screened out by the recruiter and the why. I just think it like eases, oh, I guess you guys do know what you're doing. You are doing it. I'll just wait to hear from you. And it's always been like this, like I did a lot with reporting. So you kick out reports like that in those situations and they get those reports for about 3 weeks. And then it's okay, that fret that they have kind of goes away because yeah, it's being done. And to your point, I always like to show them the decline reasons because then maybe we can adjust what you're really looking for. Maybe we can train up in this area because nobody really seems to have it. Before that was a requirement, maybe not so required now or anything like that.
Well,
so.
One of the data points we've started sharing recently is we have a couple of schedulers on my team. So I know exactly how many people interviewed during any given time frame for any of our companies. So one of the data points we've been sharing is, I'm going to make up the number. You interviewed 100 people last month and you hired 17. We presented 100 that we actually think are viable candidates. Like, what's going on here? Like, let's look at the feedback. Let's understand why your people are passing. It's not a matter of you aren't seeing candidates. It's a matter of you guys can't make the decision to hire talent. Are we passing on talent that we shouldn't be passing on? So I think the data, I mean, can be incredibly powerful. It can be complicated to collect and manage, but a couple of simple data points I think go a really long way in pacifying people.
One last question around, and I hate to hog the conversation. If anybody else wants to chime in, feel free. But one question around your model, right, where you're supporting those multiple agencies. In my mind, okay, you might work off of a staffing agency model, so to speak. Do you ever get kind of the same rack from 2 different managers and you find one candidate and you kind of double submit out to those managers? And if you do, how do you manage a manager who's mad about that?
That's a good question. We won't often double submit. I mean, in this market, candidate is king with influence from the recruiter. And the companies are pretty different from one another. You know, this one's uptown, this one's downtown, this one's 100% remote, this one does patient-focused healthcare work, this one does mostly healthcare practitioner-focused or whatever it is. And we usually try to steer a candidate either towards what's our hottest priority, like we know this agency needs talent, or really like, what are you looking for, candidate? Like, we want to make sure you have a great experience, because when we get you in the door, we have an amazing mobility program to move people around internally. So our goal is get you in the door. And if we realize like, wow, that company is getting so many more candidates than this other, we'll try to shift, some of the candidates over to them.
Years ago, I worked for Electronic Arts, where we started a centralized sourcing team, but we had 13 global studios who all needed software gaming engineers. And to your point, I was like, well, where does the candidate want to go? Orlando, San Francisco, London? What genre do you like to work on? Everything like that. So it's kind of like a la carte menu. Once you get that talent on the phone speaking, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks, Sean.
My pleasure. Leslie, I'm going to sort of come to you now with your topic.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Leslie Newton. I work for Redfin Technology and full service real estate brokerage in Seattle. And I wanted to just talk, and I think that this topic is probably, given what we're going through right now, is probably very timely around organization as a recruiter, and especially now where some hiring teams have slowed or hiring at the company has slowed. Now is a great time to pipeline and obviously keep the candidates that you are speaking with engaged and keeping them organized. So when you do have an opening, you're ready to go and you have a pipeline ready to go. So some of the things that I recommend, depending upon, and everybody's style is different, and I don't know if there's necessarily a right or wrong way, but in terms of, a lot of companies have an ATS or for me, I use my ATS. I also have my Google Doc that I also keep track of candidates that I've spoken to and what their main goals, skills, and interests are, and put notes next to their name and information, and also when I plan to follow up with them. I also I'm big with my calendar. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I put it on my calendar. If I'm going to follow up by Friday at noon, I put it on my calendar that I'm going to follow up. But I think, right now, organization as a recruiter, and also knowing, when your positions, do open, who have I talked to in the past that could be really, really good for this particular role? And I can easily go to either my spreadsheet or my ATS that I've organized, and I have people ready to
Hey,
go.
Leslie, what ATS are you on?
We're on Workday.
You're making Workday work as a CRM?
Trying very hard.
I feel you. We're on Workday as well, and it's, yeah.
It is, we use, so what do we call, you have static and dynamic, the candidate pools. So I use candidate pools and have learned how to use that use to our advantage, but it's a little challenging.
I don't think any recruiter likes their ATS.
I know, right? And I always joke because I'm like, I know recruiters didn't design this. You have engineers and product folks that maybe never were in recruiting designing these, but you try to, my ATS, but for me, again, one size doesn't fit all, but I have my Google Doc that I just keep track of people that I think are really good and people that I want to keep in touch with. The other thing, and this might be maybe not so much on topic with organization and maybe more along the lines of pipelining, the other thing that I've actually talked my hiring managers into, because we're not, again, a lot of our positions are on hold right now, but to keep that candidate engaged, having informational conversations, even if, and setting the stage for that with both the hiring manager and the candidate, to say, look, we don't have something right now, but would love to have an introduction for you and the hiring manager to get to know one another. So if and when we do have something, we're ready to go. And in this time right now, and not every manager has time to do this, but for, again, the harder to fill areas that you typically have had trouble with, and if you have a really good person, having that introductory call can be, again, another opportunity to cultivate the relationship, and then, putting your note next to that candidate's name on the spreadsheet of, hey, I followed up, they had an informational chat, I should follow up in another week, etc.
We'll comment on that, kind of to your topic about organization. I'm a big CRM guy. I've been playing that for years. Kind of what worked for me, the most simplest CRM or follow-up or tickler file, whatever you want to call it, is I would create, and this sort of handled to your point on the not now but later people. Mm-hmm. I would have a bucket or a tab or a campaign, whatever world you live in, one for each month. So if you told me to call you back in June, I'd put you in the June. If you told me October, I'd put you in the October. So when the first of that month came around, I just was simply mass email to all those people. Hey, you told me to call you back in June. So I don't have to be specific. Here I am. You got time to talk? That worked like a charm for me, because you'd get people like, oh yeah, I did tell them to call me back in June. Yeah. I am ready, and stuff like that. And you could do it even on a spreadsheet, copy, paste, PCC, you're off and running. Yeah, that worked for a trend
That's it, and that's a great, I mean, that's a great tip too. And then also, yes, use your calendar too. If you don't have, you can do a makeshift and just use your calendar of, in the upper, just, hey, follow up with John Smith regarding product roles, and you just make it very simple. That great tip there.
Is anybody using Evergreen Recs to kind of work as a pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you literally creating a rec in your system and calling it, like in Workday, they have Evergreen Recs, right?
Yeah.
I have to do a lot of reports. I hate Evergreen Recs because they screw a lot of reporting up as to what is really what. But I understand the reasons why.
Yeah, it messes up the time to fill metrics for sure.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It does. And then you have to, move them to once you have an active rec, and then you move them, and then it messes up that time to fill because it looks like you filled it within a day, but it really took X.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, we could have a whole topic on just Workday best practice.
I just figured out what associated to Evergreen Rec and Workday meant. And it's like, wait, what's that? How do you do? Oh, okay. All right then.
Yes.
Okay, Yvonne, I'll throw it your way now.
I wanted to discuss a little bit about strategic thinking. A lot of what Ed kind of talked about in terms of, how they approach, candidates, or even how they communicate with managers, parallels a lot with strategic thinking, just in terms of when you do receive, when you're trying to fill a rec or you're trying to fill a job, you have to approach it in a particular way. Some of them, yes, they can be all in a very similar method, but when it comes to, if you're looking for an SVP of, let's say, diversity, for instance, it's one of the roles right now that we are really having a hard time filling. You really have to be really strategic about your approach. From when you have the kickoff meeting with the manager to even sourcing for candidates, you're really wearing really a lot of hats, I would say. So you have to always be mindful in terms of where you are in the process for, you having the candidate experience in mind, because you know that it's critical to them joining your company, to, being a partner to the business, because you know that it's a necessity for the business, but then also how do you keep everyone happy? So you're juggling a lot. And in terms of that too, what areas are you really going to think about that you're really going to need data to kind of help you build a case for any challenges that you may face? For instance, a lot of the time, managers want the purple unicorn, right? But they have this much amount of budget. And then when you come and say, oh, you know what, our market is not competitive enough. And there's like, no, but people on our team, or this is how it was 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago. So you have to also have, in terms of just the numbers, right? So you're thinking in terms of, okay, how do I approach this from a number standpoint? How do I approach this from a just really wanting to get buy-in, right, from whoever you need to be on your side and help you really move forward. So it's a lot of things that you're juggling in the air when it comes to just being a recruiter. But if you are strategic about your approach to any of the jobs or any of the challenges that you may face, I think that it really does help you be a successful recruiter. And a lot of people, I feel like that skill is something that is really not as visible of us recruiters as Tyler had said. It is, you have to have in a way, a sales mentality, yes, but at the same time, how are you approaching that, right? You have to be very mindful in terms of, how are you going to achieve this goal? And for hard to fill roles in the technical space, are you a technical recruiter? If you're a technical recruiter, you have to go to workshops, you have to go to conferences, you have to attend hackathons, all these different things just to get the candidates that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You have to convince the hiring managers to, be a part of the recruiting process, in terms of making yourself available to really seem a little bit more personable to the candidates, because technical recruiting is a little bit more, I would say, I find it a little bit more challenging in terms of finding the right candidates, only because everyone is looking for the best person in tech. So it's a lot of things that you have to think about when when you are a recruiter. But then if you are in a way very strategic about your approach, then it helps to, I guess it helps you in a way to kind of, at the end of the day, see the success in your methods, and then you're either able to replicate that for something else, or you're able to, scale it and see what you can do better, just so that it helps you, because then you then become not only someone who you're thinking in a business mindset, right? The way you're helping the business, the way you're helping them scale, the way you're helping them, be visible in terms of employer branding. So there are all these different things that you can really, really look at it from your approach that really helps the business. Not only that, but then outside of that, what does that, from an employer branding standpoint, what does that look like? So I think that's good. It's something that's very important to know.
I always thought if you can plan your next week on a Friday afternoon, that's kind of like, okay, I'm in control of my desk. I know what's going on. I can be strategic. That's in the simplest terms, right, Yvonne? But that's easier said than done. And I know a lot of recruiters spend a couple hours a Friday trying to recap for their managers. But in my mind, hey, I want to come in here Monday morning and know what I'm doing for the rest of the week. Way easier said than done, because there's just so much going on. Maybe you need the weekend to get your breath and recap. But that's, to Yvonne, I totally agree with your big picture strategy. And then at the most simplest form, take a breath, get control of your desk, and stay sane, right?
Yeah.
Did anybody want to comment on Yvonne's?
I think it's important as recruiters that we, as part of being able to control the process, that if you're recognizing that maybe a search isn't going as well as you hoped, or hiring manager isn't as engaged as you want them to be, or whatever the case might be, that it's okay for the recruiter to say, we need to pause and regroup as a team, hiring team, recruiting team, whoever's involved, decision makers, to get in a room and talk about what's going on with the search. And I think too often people wait for the business to say something. I think if we can drive that conversation, then you're actually in control. You're helping drive and set the strategy. So, it's important.
I've found when I do, because I also do executive search at Redfin as well, and anytime I do a kickoff for those searches, my whole thing is executive is harder because their time is limited, but I do try to engage them as much as I can, and especially in the very get-go, to have them as part of the strategy, and having them helping to put that together, because I can hear from their perspective of where would you go to find this type of person, and I can come in with my point of view as well, and we can build a strategy together. It also helps, I think, to keeping them engaged and have skin in the game as well as part of this. And then we put our strategy together, and then in our weekly meetups we go through the strategy and how we're performing, how are we doing, what roadblocks are we running into, should we pivot over here, etc.
Yeah, it's awesome. Accountability, I think, is big on that. You're holding the hiring manager and accountable to you help. This is the skills that you wanted, this is the plan of attack, this is what we went and did, now here are the candidates that are coming from that. They're going to be held accountable to interview those candidates and hopefully end up hiring one of them too.
We use our brief as the contract. It's 2 pages long, and if something's going off the rails, we'll take that back to the check-in and we'll say, okay, hang on, this is what we agreed to, and this is what you've been seeing. Well, has the plan changed? Right? That accountability is important.
So my fifth topic of it for today is the great skill that I think recruiter has, it's hidden, is empathy. So in this day and age, especially in this day and age, the empathy for people who aren't getting that job, but even if they didn't come in for on-site interviews or what have you, that feeling for the candidate. I've had stints in the movie business and in the music business, and especially in the music business, I would hear it along the side, right? And I supported recruiters. I wasn't working a desk in those positions, but I'd hear from the recruiters, and I would do a lot of sourcing and pipelining. The music business was, it was everybody's dream to work in the music business. You'd get that a lot. And you just had to tell them, you're not going to, given your skill set, that's not going to get you in here to live that dream. Here's my suggestions. There's no guarantees. But having that, because recruiters can be like a counselor, right? Where especially if you get downstream and you're one of 3 candidates and you really want that job and you didn't get it, or one of 2 and you didn't get it. I would hope that the recruiters are having that conversation with the candidate, especially if they've committed that time and effort and focus. The recruiters give that back, a little bit of that empathy. So that is my piece. I love to see recruiters with empathy and not just processing and filling recs for the managers and moving on. So I'd love to see that in recruiters. All right, so we are at our half-hour point, of just a minute over. Try to keep it tight and value everybody's time. So Tyler, Leslie, Ed, Yvonne, thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate your time. I think this went really well. It was a great conversation. So again, thank you very much for everything. And let me just show, because I got in trouble for not sharing this yesterday. This is so everybody can see who everybody is for that last second shot. But again, we got people from all over the country, West Coast, Midwest, and the East Coast. So again, thank you everybody for every month. Thank you everybody very much. Sorry. And we'll end the meeting from there unless anybody else.
Thank you, Sean. Well done, man.
Thank you.
This is great.
All right,
Everyone
fantastic.
After this, many more.
Yeah, right.
Everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, take
Thank
care.
you. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye, y'all.